The world often focuses on conflicts fought with armies on front lines with clearly defined battles and territories, but the rivalry between Iran and Israel operates in a different, more complex domain. This is not a conventional war, but a persistent, undeclared conflict waged in the shadows through proxies, cyber warfare, and clandestine operations. For decades, these two regional powers have been locked in a struggle for influence, security, and ideological dominance across the Middle East. Understanding this shadow war is absolutely critical, because its tremors are felt far beyond their borders, shaping the political landscape from Damascus to Washington and carrying the constant risk of escalating into a direct, devastating confrontation that could engulf the entire region. The stakes are incredibly high, not just for them, but for global stability. This is a conflict defined by its indirect nature. Direct military clashes between Iranian and Israeli forces have been exceedingly rare until very recently. Instead, the battlefield is fluid and asymmetric. It is fought in the digital realm, with sophisticated cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure like water systems and port operations. It is fought in the back alleys of foreign capitals with assassinations of key scientists and military figures. And most significantly, it is fought through a network of allied militias and non-state actors who act on behalf of their patrons. This method allows both Tehran and Jerusalem to pursue their strategic objectives while maintaining a veneer of deniability, avoiding the catastrophic consequences of an all-out war. It is a dangerous game of chess played with human lives and regional security. The importance of this conflict cannot be overstated. It represents a fundamental clash of civilizations and strategic interests in a part of the world vital to global energy supplies and security. On one side, you have the Islamic Republic of Iran, a theocracy with ambitions to export its revolutionary ideology and establish itself as the preeminent power in the Muslim world. On the other, you have the State of Israel, a parliamentary democracy and a staunch American ally, which views Iran's nuclear ambitions and its hostile regional network as an existential threat to its very survival. This deep-seated ideological divide, coupled with competing geopolitical goals, creates a volatile mix that keeps the entire Middle East perpetually on edge, where a single miscalculation could ignite a much larger fire. This essay, dated today, June 14, 2025, will seek to unravel the intricate layers of this protracted struggle. We will examine the historical roots of their animosity, from a time when they were cautious allies to their current state of bitter enmity. We will delve into the heart of the matter, Iran's controversial nuclear program, and Israel's unwavering determination to prevent it from yielding a bomb. We will map out the complex web of proxies and allies that form the front lines of this shadow war. And finally, we will analyze the recent unprecedented escalations that have brought this hidden conflict out into the open, assessing the fragile balance that keeps these two nations from tipping over the precipice into a full-scale, catastrophic war. To comprehend the current state of hostilities, one must look back to a time before the animosity began. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran, under the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and Israel, maintained a surprisingly pragmatic and cooperative relationship. They were both non-Arab powers in a predominantly Arab region, and both were key allies of the United States. They shared intelligence, engaged in trade, and saw a mutual benefit in balancing the influence of powerful Arab states like Egypt and Iraq. This was a relationship based not on shared values, but on shared strategic interests, a cold, calculated partnership that served both nations well during a very different era of Middle Eastern politics. It's a history that seems almost surreal, given the profound hatred that defines their relationship today. The turning point was, without question, the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The overthrow of the pro-Western Shah and the rise of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini created a new political entity, the Islamic Republic of Iran. From its inception, the new regime's ideology was staunchly anti-Western and specifically anti-Zionist. Israel, previously a partner, was rebranded as the Little Satan, an illegitimate entity and an outpost of American imperialism in the heart of the Muslim world. For Iran's revolutionary leaders, opposition to Israel was not merely a foreign policy choice, it was a core tenet of their identity and a tool to rally support both at home and across the Muslim world. The call for Israel's destruction became a central pillar of Tehran's foreign policy. From Israel's perspective, this ideological shift was a direct and existential threat. The rise of a powerful, hostile regime in Tehran, dedicated to its annihilation, fundamentally altered its security calculus. This fear was not abstract. It was reinforced by Iran's actions over the subsequent decades. Tehran began to actively cultivate and fund a network of militant groups hostile to Israel, most notably Hezbollah in Lebanon and later Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the Palestinian territories. Israel views this axis of resistance as an Iranian project to encircle it with hostile forces, creating a ring of fire on its borders that could be activated at Tehran's command. This strategy of fighting through proxies transformed the nature of the threat Israel faced. This clash is therefore rooted in two irreconcilable worldviews. Iran seeks to reshape the Middle East, challenging the post-World War II order and exporting its revolutionary model. It aims to become the region's dominant power, free from American influence, with its network of proxies giving it strategic depth and leverage. Israel, in contrast, seeks to preserve its security and ensure its survival in a hostile neighborhood. It views Iran's ambitions not just as a geopolitical challenge, but as a direct threat to its existence, particularly when combined with the pursuit of nuclear weapons. This fundamental disagreement over the future of the region is the deep, unyielding root of the conflict, making a true, lasting reconciliation almost impossible to imagine under the current regimes. At the very heart of the Iran-Israel conflict lies the specter of a nuclear weapon. For Israel, the prospect of its most determined adversary acquiring the ultimate weapon is the definition of an existential threat. Israeli leaders have repeatedly stated with absolute clarity that they will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear bomb. This position is not a negotiating tactic, it is a foundational principle of their national security doctrine. They look at the rhetoric coming from Tehran, which often calls for Israel's destruction, and they imagine that rhetoric backed by a nuclear arsenal. This fear drives a significant portion of their military and diplomatic strategy, justifying covert operations and pushing for international pressure to dismantle Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Iran, for its part, has consistently maintained that its nuclear program is for purely peaceful purposes, such as energy generation and medical isotopes. The leadership in Tehran argues that, as a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has a sovereign right to enrich uranium and develop a full nuclear fuel cycle. They view the intense international scrutiny and sanctions, often championed by Israel and the United States, as hypocritical, pointing out that Israel itself is widely believed to possess an undeclared nuclear arsenal. From their perspective, the international pressure is less about non-proliferation and more about crippling Iran's technological advancement and regional power, keeping it subordinate within the existing geopolitical order. The international community's attempt to mediate this issue resulted in the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Iran nuclear deal. This landmark agreement signed between Iran and several world powers placed significant verifiable limits on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the lifting of crippling economic sanctions. Proponents argued it was the most effective way to block Iran's path to a bomb peacefully. However, Israel was a fierce opponent of the deal from the outset, arguing that its sunset clauses would eventually pave a legitimate path for Iran to develop nuclear weapons. The United States' withdrawal from the deal in 2018 and the subsequent reimposition of sanctions caused the agreement to unravel, leading Iran to progressively breach the limits on its nuclear activities. Since the collapse of the JCPOA, the situation has grown more perilous. Iran has enriched uranium to levels far beyond what is needed for civilian use, nearing weapons-grade material. It has installed advanced centrifuges and reduced the access of international inspectors. This has drastically shortened the breakout time, the time it would take for Iran to produce enough fissile material for one bomb. In response, the shadow war has intensified. Israel is believed to be behind a series of sophisticated cyber attacks and sabotage operations targeting Iranian nuclear sites, such as the mysterious explosions at the Natanz enrichment facility. These actions are designed to delay and disrupt the program, buying time while demonstrating a credible military threat. Each act of sabotage, however, risks a major Iranian retaliation, pushing the two nations closer to open war. The primary theater of the Iran-Israel conflict is not a traditional battlefield but a clandestine one, fought through what is known as the Shadow War. This is a campaign of deniable attacks, covert operations, and proxy warfare designed to inflict damage without triggering an all-out conventional war. A key tactic in this war is the use of cyber attacks. Both nations possess highly sophisticated cyber warfare capabilities. Israel is believed to have been behind attacks like the Stuxnet worm, which physically damaged Iranian centrifuges, and operations that have disrupted infrastructure like ports and gas stations. In return, Iran-linked hackers have targeted Israeli water systems, government websites, and private companies, seeking to sow chaos and gather intelligence in a constant, low-level digital skirmish. Another grim feature of this shadow war is the campaign of targeted assassinations. Over the years, a number of Iran's top nuclear scientists and military commanders have been killed in meticulously planned operations inside Iran. These attacks, widely attributed to Israel's Mossad intelligence agency, are designed to cripple Iran's technical expertise and decapitate its military leadership. The most high-profile example was the 2020 assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, considered the father of Iran's nuclear program. For Israel, these operations are a precise surgical tool to slow its adversary's progress. For Iran, they are acts of state-sponsored terrorism that demand retribution, fueling a cycle of revenge and further escalation. Perhaps the most significant element of this conflict is the war fought through proxies. Iran has spent decades cultivating a network of allied non-state actors across the region, known as the Axis of Resistance. This network includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, the most powerful of its proxies, armed with an estimated 150,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel. It also includes various Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, the Houthi movement in Yemen, and Palestinian groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Iran provides these groups with funding, training, and advanced weaponry, allowing it to project power and challenge Israel and its allies on multiple fronts simultaneously, all while maintaining a degree of separation from the actual fighting. Israel has developed its own strategy to counter this proxy network, which it calls the war between the wars. This campaign involves thousands of airstrikes, primarily in Syria, aimed at preventing the transfer of advanced Iranian weapons to Hezbollah and other proxies. The goal is to degrade Iran's military presence on its northern border and disrupt its efforts to establish a permanent foothold there. These strikes are rarely acknowledged officially by Israel, but they represent a constant, grinding effort to push back against Iranian encroachment. This proxy battlefield, stretching from the Levant to the Arabian Peninsula, is where the Iran-Israel conflict is most active, and where the potential for a miscalculation to spark a wider war is at its highest. The simmering shadow war dramatically escalated following the October 7, 2023, attack on Israel by Hamas, an Iranian-backed Palestinian group. The subsequent war in Gaza triggered a domino effect across the region. Hezbollah began daily rocket attacks and drone attacks on northern Israel, leading to the evacuation of tens of thousands of Israeli civilians and a low-intensity war along the Lebanese border. Simultaneously, Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria launched attacks on U.S. forces, and the Houthi movement in Yemen began targeting commercial shipping in the Red Sea, ostensibly in solidarity with the Palestinians. This multi-front pressure campaign, orchestrated by Iran's allies, demonstrated the full capability of its axis of resistance and pushed the region closer to a major conflagration than at any point in recent history. The conflict took a historic and dangerous turn in the spring of 2024. On April 1st, an alleged Israeli airstrike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, killed several high-ranking commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. This was a significant escalation, as a diplomatic compound is considered sovereign territory. Tehran vowed a direct response, and on the night of April 13th, it delivered. For the first time ever, Iran launched a direct military assault on Israel from its own soil, firing a massive barrage of over 300 drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. This shattered the long-held taboo of direct state-on-state attacks and brought the shadow war out into the open for all the world to see. The outcome of Iran's attack was a stunning military success for Israel and its allies. An extraordinary coalition, including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and even Jordan, worked in concert to intercept the incoming projectiles. Israel's multi-layered air defense system, including the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow systems, performed with remarkable effectiveness. An estimated 99% of the Iranian drones and missiles were shot down before reaching their targets. resulting in minimal damage and no fatalities. While Iran framed the attack as a success that demonstrated its resolve, its military failure to inflict significant harm, combined with the successful defensive coalition, allowed Israel to claim a decisive strategic victory. Israel responded with a limited calibrated strike of its own, signaling its capability without triggering a wider war. Today the region stands on a knife's edge. A full-scale war has been avoided for now, largely due to a shared, albeit reluctant, desire to step back from the brink. Neither side wants a devastating all-out conflict that would incur immense economic costs and human costs. However, the dynamics have fundamentally changed. The rules of the shadow war have been broken, and the threshold for direct confrontation is now much lower. Future provocations, whether an Israeli strike on a sensitive Iranian site or a major attack by an Iranian proxy like Hezbollah, could easily shatter the fragile calm. The unique and dangerous nature of this conflict lies in this very instability, a cold war that could turn hot with a single miscalculation, dragging the entire Middle East and its global partners into a catastrophic new chapter.